Alright, y'all, we finna get right into it. Did Lil Durk's album flop? Yes or no? Now, speaking from a general standpoint, flopping is personable to the artist itself. So I can't give y'all a direct answer, yes or no, but I can give y'all the facts around it, and y'all can come to your own conclusion later on. So usually when gauging how good or bad an album did, we usually go off the first week album sales of the album itself. In this case, Lil Durk's Almost Healed sold 124K first week. If you want to compare that to his last album, 7220, that sold 120K first week. So Lil Durk only sold 4K more this album than he did his last album. So is that good or bad? Well, just watch the video. So another example I like to use to gauge album sales is Lil Tecca, for example, because the album sales are personable to the artist. Everybody's album sales are going to be different, and one's a flop for one artist and one's good for another. So just to give you a brief rundown so you understand, Lil Tecca came out with Ransom in 2019, a pop and hit record, and then about 2 years later in 2021, I'm pretty sure, he released an album called We Love You Tecca 2. That album sold 30K first week. Now, is that good first week sales for Lil Tecca, or is that a flop? It's kind of hard to say, but let's just say 30K for Lil Tecca isn't that bad. Nobody expects Lil Tecca to sell up there with Lil Baby, Lil Durk, Gunna, or any of them in the 100K ranges. It definitely was a time when Lil Tecca was popping, but he was never really too mainstream where he was selling 100K. Therefore, his first week album sales are kind of underwhelming, being 30K, but it's not a flop. Let's use one more example just so you understand. Lil Yachty's album that he released this year called Let's Start Here sold 36K first week. Now, everybody pretty much knows Lil Yachty. He came up in the mumble rap era. But Lil Yachty's name has been popping in the industry too much recently, so therefore, his album really didn't flop, but 36K, it's decent for Lil Yachty. Obviously, no artist will want to sell 30K. They probably want to sell up there 100K or maybe close to 100K, like 70K maybe. But it also comes into play how relevant you are at the time and how popping you are in the mainstream industry. Lil Yachty and Lil Tecca have main core fan bases, but they're not popping enough in the industry where they will sell a lot first week album sales. So therefore, 36K first week for Lil Yachty is kind of underwhelming once again. But I wouldn't call it a flop per se, because Lil Yachty doesn't really promote himself too much in the mainstream industry. He just has a core fan base that he releases his music to. Okay, I lied. I want to give y'all one more example, the reverse way this time, just so y'all understand how album sales work to the artist. Let's take Yeat, for example. He's a new poppin' artist. So Yeat's last album he dropped in February. It's called Afterlife, and he sold 54K first week. Now, Yeat is kind of mainstream, but he's just up and coming. So 54K first week, as you can see, is higher than Lil Tecca and higher than Lil Yachty. So that's actually really good for him and really impressive. So therefore, for him, that's not a flop or a bad album. That is actually pretty overwhelming for him because his album did very well. Now, just to compare this to Lil Durk's situation, Lil Durk sold over 100K, while Yeat sold 50K. But as you can see, we're debating if Lil Durk's album did good or bad, even though he sold 50K more than Yeat. But Yeat sold 50K, and that's good for him. It's personable to the artist and also personable to how much your team promoted your album. So given the fact that I think a decent amount of promotion has gone into Lil Durk's album, I'm going to say that I give the overall album like a 7.7 out of 10 listening wise. But I also think we should gauge the Lil Durk album this way. Did it flop, or did it just not do what it was supposed to do? In this case, I would just say maybe it was a little underwhelming. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. Given that Durk was just on Drake's album and had a J. Cole feature, he is pretty mainstream by now, and he also did a tape with Lil Baby and Polo G, which I forgot about. So that just goes to show that Lil Durk is very mainstream. And also, I'm not gonna lie, he had a lot of big features on this album, so I expect the album sales to be very high. He had Alicia Keys on the intro, he had J. Cole All My Life like I brought up before, he had Future on the album, he had 21 Savage, Kodak Black, and Juice WRLD, and Morgan Wallen, which are all pretty mainstream big artists. So when you have big artists on your album that usually helps the streams and people want to hear other big names on the songs and the AKA features. And also, I feel like it's a big trend with Youngboy fans to really want to hate on the album. It's like a whole thing going on. But really, I do not think the album flopped at all. And I don't think it was a bad album. I thought it was a pretty good album. I wouldn't say it's amazing or anything like a 10 out of 10 like Lil Baby's My Turn. That's a classic. Or AI Youngboy 2, which is also a classic. I would say it's just a good, straight, solid album. Now, it all depends on how much the label promoted the album. If the label put loads of money into the album and expected it to sell 200K or like high 100K like Lil Baby kind of, then I would say maybe it's a flop because the label spent way more money on the album than they expected in return. Then I could say maybe it's kind of underwhelming. But any mainstream artist will love to sell 124K. Now I also got to say this, Drake and Lil Baby, they're selling up there in the 200Ks, you know what I'm saying? And Lil Durk, maybe he's not there yet. Like, I don't think any of us think Lil Durk's on Lil Baby's level. Lil Baby's like right there under Drake, and Lil Durk's kind of like reaching Lil Baby, but right underneath him. Like, he's kind of in the Polo G range to me. Now, I also saw that Lil Durk's album finished charting number 3 after his first week, which is pretty interesting because I saw that a lot of Youngboy fans were streaming Morgan Wallen's album on purpose to try to get his album to number 2 and Lil Durk's to number 3. Because YB fans are kind of glazers and haters, kind of crazy, right? Love you, Youngboy fans. But I also see that a lot of people want to call the album a flop simply because the Youngboy and Lil Durk beef and everybody's choosing sides. Even though we're all civilians, none of that even matters. this. None of y'all are OTF, none of y'all are 4K Trey, just stop it. You could be a fan, but same I take this way too serious. Like, I love a loyal fan base, but this is just cringy sometimes. A lot of people said the album was bad. A lot of people saying he flopped, but they don't really know what a flop is. Flops are very personable to the artist, and I would say 124K, as long as it was more than the 7220 album, which was Lil Durk's last album, I feel like it's a W. But the thing is, he did have a lot of big features on there, so maybe we expected it to do more. But, you know, 124K is good, it's solid, and I do not think Lil Durk's album flopped at all. That's all I really want to get off my chest. Please, Youngboy fans, please do not be in my comments getting mad at me. You know, I surrender, wave my white flag. But, you know, I'm not OTF or 4K Trey. I'm just on here giving my musical opinions, and I told you what I think. You know, it's a numbers thing. I'm a numbers guy. I really like talking about first week sales because it's pretty interesting since every artist has their own flops and their success. With my example of Yeat, by the way, which is 50K is good for him, and I think 50K will continue to be good for him because I don't think anybody's going to really expel Yeat to sell 100K unless he comes with like some crazy banger hit where he gets like 1 billion streams or something like that in like a week or something. But you know, that's all I got to say about the Lil Durk album sales type of thing, and I'm out.
I can't do this, baby, I can't do this. My bitch scared, why she sneaky like I knew this? On my own, why this bitch done left me clueless? Stupid bitch, you foolin', I'ma leave her useless. She said no, I ain't seen, but then she turned into a Judas. This bitch don't speak no English, but in her heartbreak she be fluent. Like, hold up, I might lose it, my new bitch, she the cutest. One day she my teacher, then the next day she the student.